I gave my stepdaughter everything for years, $500,000 worth of trips, college, and support while her bio dad did zero. Then she demanded legal adoption for inheritance benefits despite always saying I'm just her stepdad and not her real parenthello everyone. My name is Robert, I'm 53 years old, and today I'm going to tell you about the most painful realization I've had about family, loyalty, and how being a provider doesn't always earn you respect or appreciation. This is the story of how I spent over $500,000 raising my stepdaughter, giving her everything while her biological father contributed nothing, only to be told repeatedly that I wasn't her real dad, and then being asked to legally adopt her so she could secure inheritance benefits. It's a story about being taken for granted, about the difference between transactional relationships and genuine love, and about the moment I finally had to draw a line for my own self-respect. Let me start from the beginning. I met my wife Catherine when her daughter Olivia was 7 years old. Catherine was a single mother, divorced from Olivia's biological father, Marcus, who had essentially disappeared from their lives after the divorce. He paid minimal child support inconsistently and rarely exercised his visitation rights. When he did show up, it was usually to take Olivia for a few hours, buy her some toys or treats to be the fun parent, and then disappear again for months. Catherine was struggling financially, working 2 jobs to make ends meet, living in a small apartment, and doing her best to provide for Olivia while dealing with the emotional toll of being essentially abandoned by her ex-husband. I fell in love with Catherine quickly. She was strong, resilient, kind, and devoted to her daughter. I also grew to care deeply for Olivia, who was a bright, energetic little girl who seemed to crave male attention and guidance that her father wasn't providing. When Catherine and I got married 2 years after we started dating, I made a commitment not just to her but to Olivia as well. I knew I was signing up to be a stepfather, and I took that role seriously. I wanted to be the stable, reliable, present father figure that Olivia deserved, the one Marcus clearly had no interest in being. From the beginning, I provided for Olivia as if she were my own biological child. We moved into a beautiful 4-bedroom house in a great school district. I paid for everything, her private school tuition starting in middle school because the local public school wasn't performing well, her extracurricular activities including dance classes, piano lessons, and later tennis coaching, her clothes, her technology, her everything. When Olivia wanted to go on school trips to Washington, D.C. or Europe, I paid for those. When her friends were getting brand-name clothes and the latest phones, I made sure Olivia had the same so she wouldn't feel left out or less than her peers. I attended every school event, every recital, every tennis match. I helped with homework, taught her to drive, had the uncomfortable talks about boys and relationships that her mother sometimes struggled with. By any measure, I was her father in every way that mattered except biologically. Marcus, meanwhile, continued his pattern of minimal involvement. He would occasionally send a birthday card with some cash, maybe show up for Christmas if it was convenient, but he was largely absent. He remarried when Olivia was 10 and started a new family, having 2 more children with his new wife, which seemed to make him even less interested in maintaining a relationship with Olivia. His child support payments were sporadic and often late, and eventually Catherine stopped pursuing them aggressively because the amount was negligible compared to what I was providing, and the stress of dealing with Marcus wasn't worth the small sum we might recover. Here's where the painful part begins. Despite everything I did for Olivia, despite being the one who showed up consistently and provided everything she needed and wanted, I was never allowed to forget that I wasn't her real dad. When she was younger, it would come out in small ways during arguments or when she was upset. If I tried to discipline her or set boundaries, she would sometimes say things like, "You're not my real dad. You can't tell me what to do." Catherine would usually back me up in these moments, reminding Olivia that I was her stepfather and deserved respect. But the words still stung every time as Olivia got older. Particularly during her teenage years, the distinction became more pronounced. She started having regular phone conversations with Marcus, who had apparently decided to try to rebuild their relationship now that she was old enough to hang out with in ways he found more interesting. He would take her to nice dinners, concerts, buy her expensive gifts, basically swoop in for the fun stuff while I continued handling all the actual work and expense of raising her. And Olivia ate it up. She started talking about her real dad more frequently, sharing stories about their outings, posting pictures with him on social media with captions like daddy-daughter time that felt like a slap in the face given that I was the one who had been there for her every single day. I tried to talk to Catherine about how this made me feel, but she was caught in a difficult position. She was happy that Marcus was finally showing some interest in Olivia and didn't want to discourage that relationship, even though she acknowledged that it was unfair to me. She would assure me that Olivia loved me and appreciated everything I did, but the evidence suggested otherwise. Olivia was perfectly happy to accept everything I provided while making it clear that I would never be her real father. That Marcus held that title regardless of his absence and lack of contribution. When it came time for college, I paid for everything. Olivia wanted to go to a private university out of state that cost about $70,000 per year, including tuition, room, board, and expenses. For years, I paid nearly $300,000 for her education. Marcus contributed nothing, though he did show up for her high school graduation and college orientation, taking credit in conversations with other parents for how well his daughter had turned out and how proud he was of her. I stood there listening to him, this man who had been absent for most of her life, acting like he had anything to do with her success. While I had been the one paying for everything and supporting her through every challenge, during college I also funded Olivia's lifestyle. I gave her a generous monthly allowance, paid for her sorority dues, sent money for spring break trips to Cancun and Miami, bought her a reliable car when she turned 19. When she studied abroad in Spain for a semester junior year, I paid the additional costs. When she wanted to do an unpaid internship in New York City the summer before senior year, I covered her rent and living expenses in Manhattan. I calculated recently that between high school, college, and everything else over the years, I've spent approximately $500,000 on Olivia. That's $500,000 on a child who has consistently reminded me that I'm not her real father after college. Olivia got a decent job in marketing but struggled with the transition to financial independence. She was used to having everything paid for, and suddenly having to budget and pay her own bills was challenging. I continued helping her financially, paying for her apartment security deposit, buying her professional work clothes, helping with car repairs, basically continuing the pattern of financial support that had defined our relationship. Catherine would sometimes suggest that maybe we should let Olivia struggle a bit and learn to manage on her own. But I felt like I had invested so much already that I might as well continue supporting her as she got established. Then, about 6 months ago, something happened that changed my perspective on everything. My business, a commercial real estate company that I built from the ground up, had a particularly successful year, and I was discussing estate planning with my attorney. I have assets worth several $1,000,000, including properties, investments, and cash, and I wanted to make sure everything was properly structured. Catherine and I don't have biological children together, though we had discussed it in the early years of our marriage before deciding we were content with our family as it was. My attorney asked about my wishes regarding Olivia and the estate plan, and I told him I intended to leave a significant portion to her, probably splitting my estate between Catherine and Olivia. That's when my attorney pointed out something I hadn't fully considered. Because Olivia was not legally adopted by me, she had no automatic inheritance rights. If something happened to me, everything would go to Catherine as my wife, and then Catherine could choose to pass things on to Olivia, but there was no legal guarantee. He recommended that if I wanted Olivia to inherit directly from me, I should either formally adopt her as an adult, which is possible in our state, or create a very specific trust structure that named her as a beneficiary. Both options had different tax implications and legal complexities. I mentioned this conversation casually to Catherine, not really thinking much of it at the time. I said something about how my attorney had brought up the adoption option and maybe we should consider it to simplify the estate planning. Catherine thought it was a good idea and suggested we bring it up to Olivia the next time we saw her. I agreed, thinking that Olivia might appreciate the gesture. That after all these years of being her dad in every practical sense, maybe formalizing it legally would be meaningful to her. What happened next was eye-opening and ultimately heartbreaking. A few days after my conversation with Catherine, Olivia called me. She said her mom had mentioned the adoption idea and she wanted to talk about it. I was touched, thinking maybe this would be an emotional conversation where she acknowledged our relationship and expressed interest in making it official. Instead, the conversation was completely transactional. Olivia asked detailed questions about my estate, how much she would inherit, what the timeline would look like, whether there were any conditions or restrictions on her inheritance. It became clear very quickly that she wasn't interested in adoption as a way to honor our relationship or formalize our father-daughter bond. She was interested in adoption as a way to secure access to my money. I was stunned by the coldness of the conversation. I asked her directly if she wanted to be adopted because it would mean something to her emotionally, because she saw me as her father and wanted to make that official. She hedged, giving vague answers about how it would be nice to have that legal recognition, but she kept steering the conversation back to the financial implications. She asked if being adopted would guarantee she would inherit even if something happened to Catherine, if it would protect her inheritance from any future claims, if there would be tax advantages for her. She was treating this like a business negotiation, not a discussion about family and love. Then she said something that made everything click into place with painful clarity. She mentioned that her real dad Marcus had recently remarried again, his second wife having left him, and that he had been making comments about changing his will to leave everything to his two younger children from his previous marriage. Olivia was worried that she would be cut out of any inheritance from Marcus, and she wanted to make sure she had financial security from somewhere. She actually said, if I'm not going to get anything from my real dad, at least I should get something from you since you've basically been paying for everything anyway. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. After 16 years of being a father to this girl, after spending $500,000 on her education and lifestyle, after being there for every important moment while Marcus did the bare minimum, I was being told explicitly that I was the backup plan, the financial safety net, the not real dad who existed primarily to provide money, and now that there was a formal inheritance at stake. Suddenly, adoption seemed like a good idea to her. Not because she valued our relationship, but because she wanted to secure her claim to my assets. I told Olivia I needed to think about things and ended the call. I spent the next few days doing a lot of reflection, and I had some very difficult but necessary conversations with Catherine. I told her that I felt used, that our entire relationship with Olivia seemed to be based on my role as a provider rather than any genuine affection or respect. Catherine tried to defend Olivia at first, saying she was just being practical, that she had been raised in a world where financial security mattered, that she didn't mean to be hurtful. But when I laid out example after example of times Olivia had made it clear I wasn't her real father, times she had chosen Marcus over me despite his absence, times she had taken my support for granted while showing more excitement about small gestures from her biological father, Catherine couldn't really argue. She admitted that Olivia had always struggled with how to navigate having both a stepdad who provided everything and a biological dad she wanted a relationship with, and that maybe we had enabled some unhealthy patterns. I made a decision that I know might seem harsh to some people, but it felt necessary for my own self-respect. I told Catherine that I would not be adopting Olivia. I explained that adoption should be about love and relationship, not about inheritance and financial security. If Olivia wanted to be my legal daughter, it should be because she valued me as her father, not because she wanted guaranteed access to my money. I also told Catherine that I would be restructuring my estate plan to leave most of my assets to her. with the understanding that she could choose to pass things to Olivia if she wished, but that I would not be setting up direct inheritance for Olivia beyond perhaps a modest trust fund. Additionally, and this was the harder part, I told Catherine that I would be significantly reducing the financial support I had been providing to Olivia. I wouldn't cut her off completely, but the days of paying for everything, of bailing her out of financial troubles, of funding her lifestyle were over. She was 25 years old with a college degree and a job, and it was time for her to learn to live within her own means. If she needed genuine help in an emergency, I would be there. But the open checkbook era was ending. Catherine was upset initially, worried about how this would affect her relationship with Olivia, concerned that I was being too harsh. But when I asked her honestly whether she thought Olivia appreciated or respected what I had done over the years, whether she thought Olivia saw me as her father or as her mother's husband who paid for things, Catherine couldn't say yes. She knew, deep down, that I was right. Olivia had been raised with a sense of entitlement about my financial support while maintaining emotional distance from me, and that dynamic wasn't healthy for anyone. When we told Olivia about my decision, her reaction confirmed everything I had suspected. She was furious. She accused me of being petty and vindictive, of punishing her for having a relationship with her biological father, of holding money over her head to force her to pretend I was her real dad. She said I had always provided for her willingly and that she had never asked for any of it, so it was unfair to suddenly attach conditions. She claimed that I was the one who had insisted on paying for everything, that she had never demanded trips or college tuition or any of it, and therefore she didn't owe me gratitude or anything else. I let her say her piece, and then I responded calmly. I explained that she was right about one thing. I had provided for her willingly, out of love and commitment to being her parent. But being a parent is a two-way relationship that requires respect and reciprocity, and I had realized that our relationship had become one-sided. I told her that for years she had made it clear that I wasn't her real father, that Marcus held that position in her heart regardless of his absence or lack of contribution. I said that I accepted that reality now, and I was adjusting my role accordingly. I would always care about her and wish her well, but I couldn't continue being the primary financial support for someone who saw me primarily as a wallet rather than as a father. I also addressed the adoption issue directly. I told Olivia that when she called to discuss adoption, she had made it entirely about inheritance and money with no mention of our relationship or what it would mean emotionally. I explained that in that moment, I realized that she didn't want me to be her legal father because she loved me or valued our relationship. She wanted adoption as a financial instrument, and that felt like the ultimate disrespect after 16 years of being the only father who consistently showed up for her. Olivia tried to backtrack, saying I had misunderstood, that she did care about me, that she was just being practical about financial matters. But the damage was done. We both knew the truth. She had taken my support for granted for years, had maintained the distinction between me and her real dad whenever it suited her, and had only become interested in formalizing our legal relationship when there was money on the line. No amount of walking it back could change what had been revealed in that initial conversation. The aftermath has been difficult. Olivia barely speaks to me now, and when she does, there's a coldness that wasn't there before, or maybe it was always there and I was just choosing not to see it. She talks to Catherine regularly and has apparently painted me as the villain in this story, telling friends and family that her stepfather is cutting her off financially and refusing to adopt her out of spite. Some relatives have reached out to me suggesting I'm being too harsh, that Olivia is still young and learning, that I should reconsider. But I've stood firm in my decision. Catherine has been trying to navigate the middle ground, maintaining her relationship with both of us, but it's put a strain on our marriage. She understands intellectually why I made the decision I did, but emotionally she's struggling with the distance between me and Olivia. She's also dealing with Olivia's anger and hurt, and sometimes she suggests that maybe I should consider some level of compromise to ease the family tension. But I've explained to her that this isn't about money or even about adoption specifically. It's about respect and about not allowing myself to be used anymore. Here's what I've realized through all of this. Being a stepparent is incredibly complicated, especially when there's a biological parent still in the picture, even if that parent is largely absent. No matter how much you provide, how present you are, how much you love and care for your stepchild, you can never force them to see you as their real parent. That acceptance has to come from them voluntarily, and in Olivia's case, it never did. Marcus will always be her real dad in her eyes, regardless of his failings, and I will always be Robert, her stepfather who married her mom and paid for things. I also realized that providing financially for a child doesn't automatically earn you love, respect, or appreciation. In some cases, like with Olivia, it can create a dynamic where the child comes to see you primarily as a provider rather than as a person worthy of genuine emotional connection. By always being the one to pay for everything, by never letting her struggle or face financial consequences, I may have actually damaged our relationship rather than strengthened it. She never had to appreciate what I was giving her because it was always just there, always available, taken for granted as her due. The most painful realization has been that Olivia's interest in adoption was purely financial. If I had been poor, if I hadn't had assets worth inheriting, she would never have brought it up or agreed to it. The fact that she only wanted to formalize our legal relationship when there was money involved tells me everything I need to know about how she values me. And while that hurts, it's also been clarifying. I can't force someone to love me or see me as their father. All I can do is respect myself enough not to continue in a relationship dynamic that's fundamentally unbalanced and unappreciated. Some people might think I'm being vindictive or that I'm using money to manipulate Olivia into giving me the relationship I want. But that's not what this is about. This is about recognizing that I've been in a one-sided relationship for 16 years and choosing not to continue that pattern. I'm not demanding that Olivia call me dad or pretend to have feelings she doesn't have. I'm simply acknowledging the reality of our relationship and adjusting my behavior accordingly. She sees me as her mother's husband who has money. So I'm stepping back from the parental role I had been trying to fill and allowing her to navigate her adult life with the level of independence she clearly wants. Marcus, interestingly enough, has apparently been furious about all of this. According to Catherine, Olivia told him what happened, and he's been bad-mouthing me, saying that I'm punishing his daughter for having a relationship with him, that I'm jealous of their bond, that I'm showing my true colors by withdrawing support. The irony of Marcus criticizing me for not doing enough for Olivia when he has done virtually nothing for her entire life is not lost on me. But it does confirm something I've suspected, that Marcus likes having me around as the financial support system for his daughter, freeing him to be the fun parent without any of the responsibility or expense. As for my relationship with Catherine, we're working through things in couples therapy. She admits that she may have enabled the dynamic with Olivia, that she was so grateful to me for stepping up and providing for her daughter that she didn't want to rock the boat by addressing Olivia's lack of respect or appreciation. She's coming to understand that by not requiring Olivia to treat me with the respect I deserved as her stepfather, she actually contributed to the problem. We're trying to figure out how to move forward, how to have a marriage that works even with this tension regarding Olivia. I've restructured my estate plan as I said I would. The bulk of my assets will go to Catherine, with the understanding that she can choose to provide for Olivia as she sees fit. I've set up a modest trust fund for Olivia that will give her access to about $50,000 when she turns 30, enough to help with a house down payment or provide some financial cushion, but not the significant inheritance she was expecting. My attorney has made it clear in the documents that this is my choice, that Olivia is not being disinherited due to any legal issue, but rather due to my personal decision based on our relationship. Looking back on 16 years of being Olivia's stepfather, I have mixed feelings. I don't regret providing for her or being there for her during her childhood and young adulthood. Those were choices I made out of love and commitment, and they were the right choices at the time. But I do regret not setting better boundaries, not requiring more reciprocity in the relationship, not addressing the issues earlier when they first started appearing. I allowed myself to be taken for granted, to be treated as less than. Because I was so invested in being the father figure Olivia needed that I ignored the signs that she didn't actually want or value that from me. If I could give advice to other step-parents, it would be this: love your stepchildren, provide for them, be there for them. But don't lose yourself in the process. Require respect, set boundaries, and don't allow yourself to be treated as secondary while doing primary parenting. Make sure that the relationship is reciprocal, that you're receiving appreciation and consideration in return for what you're giving. And be realistic about the fact that you may never be seen as the real parent, no matter how much you do. And that's something you need to accept and work within rather than fighting against. As for Olivia, I hope she eventually understands why I made the decisions I did. I hope that someday, maybe when she's older and has children of her own, she realizes what I gave her and will understand that my stepping back wasn't about punishment but about self-respect. But even if she never understands, even if our relationship never recovers, I know I made the right choice. I chose to value myself, to stop accepting a relationship dynamic that was hurting me, and to set boundaries that protect my emotional well-being. That's not being vindictive or petty. That's being healthy. My name is Robert, I'm 53 years old, and this is the story of how I spent $500,000 raising my stepdaughter, only to realize that money and provision don't buy love or respect, and how I finally chose to stop being taken for granted. It's been painful, it's cost me relationships, and there's no neat happy ending. But I have my self-respect back, and that's worth more than any amount of money I spent or any inheritance I could have promised. Thank you for listening to my story.